can hit go. Okay, Amy, I need you to bring this leg up really high up against your chest. Like kind of in a running start position. There you go. Big push. Big push. Oh, no. Okay, that's not working. Okay, Amy, I need you to flip over on your back. As quick as you can. Bring your legs all the way back to your chest. I need some super pubic, Buffy. Good job. That's it. Okay, I'm going to corkscrew this baby out. Oh, there we go. Look at that baby, healthy as can be. Mama. Okay, guys, so hopefully that was really entertaining. We enjoyed doing that. So after a shoulder dystocia like that, what are some things that we're going to be thinking about for after the shoulder dystocia? Go ahead and think about that for a second. So if one of your first thoughts was hemorrhage, that's what I'm automatically going to think too is let's think about hemorrhage because we've kind of had a little bit of a traumatic birth. Obviously, you're going to be worried about baby resuscitation too, but look at that. Our baby came out just fine, totally healthy. So now after the placenta has delivered, we're going to be thinking about mom and potentially a postpartum hemorrhage because we know sometimes that goes hand in hand with a shoulder dystocia. So next, I want you guys to think about what kind of meds you would be prescribing, what hemorrhage looks like, that sort of thing. In a minute, we're going to look at some EBLs and see what it looks like on the pad. I want you to guess what amount it might be, and then I will tell you exactly how much of the fake blood I have put on the pads, and then you can kind of see where your EBL in your head compares to what it actually is. So hang tight. Okay, guys, so I put a little bit of blood on a pad. I want you to think about if this were our patient that just had this shoulder dystocia. When you see this amount of blood, how much are you thinking in your head? And are you thinking you're going to intervene at this time, or is it still an appropriate blood loss for a vaginal delivery? So here is the pad that we have. This is our postpartum or our patient. Pretty shortly after delivery, this is what you're seeing. You know, it's kind of hard to tell through video. But I want you to think about how much that looks like and if you're going to be intervening at this time. So this amount is actually just 300. I measured it out. So this is 300 QBL. And so at this point, we're probably not going to be doing anything for a vaginal delivery. It looks like everything's fine. That's an appropriate amount of blood loss. And so if you see that, you're probably not going to do anything. So I'm going to show you another amount here, and I want you to continue to have the same thought process. If this was right after delivery, what would you do? Okay, guys, so this is our next amount, and I want you to keep in mind that this is not completely soaked into the pad yet, and so there's a lot of blood sitting on top here. It's pretty well saturated all the way through in this big spot here. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are. What would you do at this point? How much are you estimating in your head? That first amount was only 300, but this is actually that 300 plus a little bit more, and so now we're sitting right at 700. So this is kind of what 700 looks like, obviously taking into account that this is fake blood that's not soaked all the way into the pad. But that is what 700 kind of looks like. And so at this point, I'm curious, what are you thinking in your head? If you know you're roughly estimating that your blood loss is about 700 after vag delivery, and you've still got blood coming, you're having some large clots, it's not stopping, you've got atony or some other things going on, what are you thinking and what meds are you going to give? So just go ahead and think about that and think about what meds you would do. So at this point, you're probably going to be having some Pitocin going because you're at 700. Your blood loss is continuing where things aren't really slowing down. So you're probably going to be thinking about hanging a bag of PIT if you already haven't already. You might be thinking about doing 800 of Cytotec orally. You might be thinking about doing some 0.2 of Methergin, IM. Some other things to consider would be Hemabate. I know a lot of times that's provider preference. Of course, we want to think about Hemabate is contraindicated in those people with asthma, and Methergin is contraindicated in those people who have high blood pressures. And then the other thing is TXA. I don't know if you guys are seeing TXA in the environments that you're doing clinical in. A little bit newer to the hemorrhage scene, but has been used for other kinds of hemorrhages for a while now. But now that's kind of part of the hemorrhage protocol. So we know we want to give that within like that 3-ish hour time frame from delivery. So since this is immediately post delivery, if we know we're actively bleeding, it's not slowing down, we're probably going to give that TXA to have that on board, since we only have that window to give around delivery time. So right now we're at 700 blood loss. We're still having clots, uterine atony. It's continuing. I'm going to show you another pad, and I want you to kind of think in your head what amount that might be. So you've taken your patient's pad away. We know we were at 700, and so now we're looking at a new fresh pad that we've put down in addition to that 700. Obviously we're keeping pads at this point. If you're continuing to bleed and your meds aren't kicking in yet, you haven't gotten the bleeding to stop yet, you might think about bimanual compression if we're about to escalate to that next step. But if you're not at the point of escalating to going to the OR or anything like that, another thing I didn't mention with the meds, you might want to consider doing a catheter, because we know we need to have an empty bladder, especially if we're looking at hemorrhage. So this is your next amount. So we've got that 700 that we had before, and then looking over here, it looks like we've actually got about 700 more. So now we're at 1,400 blood loss, and that's kind of what that looks like. That's what 1,400 looks like right there on the pads. So this is going to be obviously several very large gushes. If you work somewhere where there's those gradient drapes that have the plastic underneath that measures for you, you might be able to tell right there, well, we've already got 1,400 in there. I mean, that's pretty extensive. So you're going to be giving those meds, doing your interventions. Obviously, you've got fluids going. You might need to be putting more blankets on the patient or using like a bear hugger to keep them warm, because at this point we're at full-blown hemorrhage. We're going to be giving all those meds. We're going to be needing to draw a CBC. Then obviously you'll be repeating the CBC later. So luckily for us, this patient had a terrible delivery. She had shoulder dystocia. Thank goodness we're great midwives. We were able to resolve it with our maneuvers and with corkscrewing the baby out. Then she hemorrhaged. So of course, we've got this hemorrhage going on too on board. But look at that. We're great midwives again. We've saved her. We hit 1,400 blood loss. We did all of our interventions, emptied her bladder, got her fluids, gave her those meds, and thank goodness, because we're so great at what we do, we've saved this patient. So I hope that was a fun little video about shoulder dystocia, and I hope it kind of gives you a visual of what that amount of blood loss will look like just on pads like this. In a second here, I'm going to give you a couple more visuals just to have in the back of your brain on two different kinds of pads. So I'll show you those here in a sec.